All right, how you doing, Robin?
I'm good, Austin. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm here with Robin Kerner, and I am Austin Molka. And as you can see, we are doing a web video. Robin has never seen Rick and Morty. What we're going to do here is I have picked 3 quotes from Rick and Morty. They're all from season 1. I don't want to jump around between seasons because I think each season has a different feel to it. Philosophically, epistemologically, they have different feels to them. So I'm going to stick in season 1 because I don't want to be jumping around different mindsets.
So I think, Austin, have you just decided that we're going to assume that our audience knows what epistemology means? Because if so, we just defined our market right there.
Yes. Epistemological, just in case for people who don't know, it's the philosophy of how we know. Why do we know what we know? How do we know? Is anything true? Descartes says, I could be in a dream right now. How do I know I'm not in a dream? So Rick and Morty is about a alcoholic grandfather who's a kind of an evil genius scientist who drags around his grandson, Morty, who is not very intelligent, kind of just an average kid, maybe a little bit below average. But he drags him along on all these crazy adventures, talking about all of these things that he doesn't understand, and gives him life advice that is borderline absurd. And especially in the first season, Rick does seem crazy. He develops into more of a more sensible person, but he'll say things like, you don't need to go to school, Morty. School is stupid. Smart people don't go to school. That's basically the gist of the show.
Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV.
Ricksty Minutes is the name of the episode, which is a play on 60 Minutes.
Mm.
It's in season 1, episode 8, and Morty says, nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody dies. Now come watch TV.
My first thought on that, and this is opening up a huge can of worms, is I think the premise is probably false. I think we choose to be here.
As Louis C.K. said in his recent stand-up, everybody that is alive chooses to be alive because they always have the option to kill themselves. And the fact that there are so many people not killing themselves is pretty profound.
Now that's true, although meant something even more metaphysical. I am not being a philosophic materialist. I think there's something about me more than the particles that make me up.
You didn't choose to exist from the very beginning, but you indeed choose to continue existing.
I'm saying that might be wrong. I'm saying I might have chosen to be born. Let's call it pre-existing individuation.
Okay, so
manifest
you're a
physically.
Dualist, you would say?
No.
Okay.
I can see this is going to be some heavy stuff, right? Shows a good idea,
yes.
Right? Manifest physically because it chose to. I don't know that that's the case. I don't have an ego investment in that belief, but that's the best working hypothesis I have as to human existence right now. So, at that level, at a very deep level, I think I reject the very first few words of that quote.
Can you prove that?
No, and that's the whole point.
Any evidence?
And that's the whole schema. The whole schema is that we have to forget that, and one of what we're doing here in this incarnation is remembering ourselves as we are.
I'm going to play this clip, and this is said by Morty. This is said by the character that isn't so smart.
Hey, you doing okay? I kind of know how you feel, Summer.
No, you don't. You're the little brother. You're not the cause of your parents' misery. You're just a symptom of it.
Can I show you something?
Morty, no offense, but a drawing of me you made when you were 8 isn't gonna make me feel like less of an accident.
That out there? That's my grave.
Wait, what?
On one of our adventures, Rick and I basically destroyed the whole world. So we bailed on that reality and we came to this one. Because in this one, the world wasn't destroyed. And in this one, we were dead. So we came here and we buried ourselves and we took their place. And every morning, Summer, I eat breakfast 20 yards away from my own rotting corpse.
So, you're not my brother?
I'm better than your brother. I'm a version of your brother you can trust when he says don't run. Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody's gonna die. Come watch TV.
All right, now with the context of the video now, does any change in thoughts?
Yeah, and this is all about, what level you take it at, isn't it?
Yes.
Because you put that in context and you see what that, the reason he's saying what he's saying,
Yes.
the psychological, the emotional work that he's doing on his big sister, effectively, right? Is that right?
Yes, his
Yeah,
big sister.
Yeah. See, that's interesting, isn't it? Because it seems that what he's almost saying there is, because this whole thing is what you make of it, right? It doesn't come, it doesn't come to you. Your existence, your experience doesn't come with an inherent meaning at that level. The meaning is what you give it. So
Yes.
that's, you are at full choice.
That would be the full depth of what he's trying to say and what he's starting to comprehend that he hasn't fully comprehended yet.
Yeah, and and I think, I see, it's interesting because when he's talking about different realities there, that speaks to something important, which is that most deep misery, I think, comes from mistaking the partial for the whole. Right? You have a sense of the parameters of your experience, the limits of your nature, the limits of possibility. In other words, what the world is, and therefore what the field of potential is. And in your mental exploration of that, it's all awful. And so you behave accordingly. But usually there is more in heaven and earth than is dreamt of in your philosophy, Horatio, or however the quote goes, right?
Yes.
And I think that gets to that. Like in the setup there seems to be that this one reality is just, the reality you're experiencing is just one of many. In other words, reality is many more leveled than you think it is. And that kind of changes everything, right? I mean,
Yes.
that's the thing.
In the show, Morty is kind of finding a new way to cope. He's kind of coped with his existence and coped with reality in a nihilistic way. So if you look at it from epistemologically nihilistic, it's not morally nihilistic. There's a distinction made between morally nihilistic and the epistemologically nihilistic, because the sister is the one that was behaving almost morally nihilistically. Nothing matters. She's going animalistic. She doesn't care about what happens or anything. Makes sense? There's a clear distinction between those two types of nihilism that I've never made before.
I mean, as you say that, what springs to mind is the Sartre quote, what is not possible is not to choose.
What is not possible
is not to choose. So you can be in a field of unknowing, right? You can be a complete epistemologic, you can be all bets are off, right? And yet here you are.
Yes.
Right? And yet here you are. And yet, so at that point you make a choice, and that choice is going to have, as far as you can perceive, real consequences for real others, for real experiencing entities. So you're right there, right? Yes. You can throw all of your epistemological toys out of the cradle, and you're still left in this moral universe if you don't go to moral nihilism and just, let's just shoot up the mall.
Yes. Let's go to the second quote now. Okay. This is a quote from season 1, episode 9, called "Something Rick This Way Comes." Rick invented a machine, and the machine performs a very basic function, but it's self-aware.
That's already interesting.
Hey, Rick, I have to make a project for the science fair this weekend. You think you could help me out?
Whatever. Well, I mean, traditionally, science fairs are a father-son thing.
Well, scientifically, traditions are an idiot thing.
Morty, I think it would be fun for you to work on a science project with your dad.
Yeah, Dad, why don't we do it together?
Yes! You backed the right horse on this one, son. We'll get out the crayons, brew some coffee, and knock this thing out in 2 or 3 days.
What is my purpose?
Pass the butter. Thank you. Oh.
Dad, I need a ride to work.
Maybe Rick can give you a ride. I'm helping Morty with science.
I'm busy.
Doing what?
Anything else?
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
Yeah, welcome to the club, pal.
Okay, it's your first time I've seen anything of this show, and it's brilliant. Good call.
I thought you would enjoy that one.
My goodness, wow. Where to begin? I don't even know where to start on that.
Well,
Ask me a question.
I was unable to hear the audio. I could only just see it, and I don't exactly remember what happened. But I know that the father was doing some mundane task on his phone, like playing a game. And it's clearly trying to make some comparison between the purpose of the life of humans and the purpose of a life of a robot. Like if the father were to ask himself, like just in his head, like, why am I pressing these balloons? The words meaning and purpose are something that don't really exist in our natural realm. I like to think of humans like animals a lot because I think it's a very good comparison. And then you just take animals and you add language. And then you think of what types of languages would develop with the animals to serve their purpose of being animals. Throughout time, a lot of the words that we've developed are not quite helpful or meaningful or even true. We've created these meanings that don't exist in reality, such as meaning and purpose, because I don't think you can have a meaning or have a purpose. I think as creatures, as human beings, we create that purpose.
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to, I guess, the very first thing I said in relation to that first clip, which is what you're expounding there, I think is, you know, a kind of a common sense view today.
Yes.
It's a deeply, maybe not quite the right word, but secular view.
Yes, it's a very secular view.
It is the case that it may well be the case that, you know, language, you can take animal, add language, and get human. And a human is an animal. Obviously, a human's not like an animal. A human is an animal.
Yes.
So that's all true. But I'm not sure that that means that if I'm right that we chose to be here, then there is a sense in which there is a purpose that transcends anything that we come up with once we've incarnated. If you start with the idea that what I said at the beginning is obviously absurd, and many people would, then you're probably left more or less with where you're at. But I'm just not convinced of that. You can say, if you look at the way people live their lives, that way of living puts them in a performative contradiction with the idea that you've just indicated. I mean, you can argue that. You can say, well, not at all. I mean, I can make my meaning about loving my family. I can call that a purpose. So I'm not, my actions are not at odds with that. But there obviously is a deep philosophical question here, which is, does your love for your children mean any more than something that works evolutionarily to ensure the survival of the species? Is that what it is? And it may be or it may not be. But if it is, and you know that, what stops you throwing it out the window? If you know it's just a practical thing, why don't we act like that? and that's not my argument for what I said at the open of this show. The argument I would make for that would take a whole show of itself. But
Yes.
that's what this is getting at me.
Yes,
and it's
that's
not
very
an
true.
either or proposition either. My suspicion about this allows and includes what you said. I'm not contradicting what you said.
Yes. So if you look at other animals, they speak in very complex languages, but they do so with their bodies. So for example, with wolves, when two wolves are fighting over a territory, they perform almost what would be considered a play, and something that you could imagine the early cavemen or Neanderthals or other ancestors doing, where they start growling and acting fierce and trying to prove to the other wolf their strength and their ability to kill them, but in a way that's kind of like a game. And when one wolf eventually gives up because it becomes scared or tired, and it admits defeat, and it admits defeat by rolling over and exposing its neck. And the other wolf goes to the defeated wolf and it grabs it by the neck with its teeth and kind of just play nibbles, or it will just go up to its neck and perform some type of action and move towards it to let it know, I could have killed you right now, you would be dead, and doesn't kill it. And if you look at games that were played throughout history by children, a lot of games are like this. There's a lot of games that people played before they ever, cops and robbers. Was there, did you ever have a linguistic set of rules for cops and robbers? Was there ever mapped out? Everyone just assumed they knew how to, everyone played, and everyone played finely, or everyone played well. But if you were to go up to a kid and ask, hey, what are the rules for this game? They would have no clue. They wouldn't even know begin to start, but they were able to communicate with games and rituals and plays. So I think those types of things, the things that we do, are much more profound and much more important than the things that we say. I think there's a lot more truth to when I give somebody a hug, or I help somebody, or I eat. All the actions that I perform are more truthful than anything I can say, because language is just so complex.
Oh, wow. So you've raised a few things there. One of the things that I was thinking after that clip, and as you started talking, was that there seems to be an interesting observation in that clip, that depth and or complexity of a process or way of being does not necessarily mean depth or complexity of the goal or the purpose, right? So what one does can be complex, but what one does it for can be very simple. You know, here is an AI robot with all the sophistication that intelligence involves, and he exists to pass butter. On the other hand, here is a human being, right, with all of the moral meaning that people typically assign to being human, etc., etc. And what he's doing, at least at that point in the clip, is playing with balloons, right? That's a fascinating tension, right? And it speaks exactly to what is meaning and exactly to what is purpose. But you find it in, do we look for it in what we do? Do we look for it in why we do it? Is that a false dichotomy? Is it even a dichotomy? There's a lot there. You know, as we're doing this, this is the first show, I'm thinking that we need one show per clip, because you also said some really interesting things in your response to that clip that I would love to run with too.
We can have a Patreon page where we show the full clips. We'll show an hour-long conversation for the people that really liked it and really, because there are going to be hardcore philosophers and hardcore people that love this conversation that will pay $1 a month or $5 a month to watch a full 1 hour clip. So if you're listening to this now after hearing that and you missed a bunch of the conversation I just edited out, you can go to the Patreon page that I will link after the show and give us money and hear all the fascinating stuff that we just said.
I see what you did there, Austin.
So now we're going to go to the last one, and this is my favorite one.
Try not to worry about it, Morty. You're a good kid. And there's not a premium on that right now, but you'll be getting girls sometime after Brad's out of shape.
You're missing the point, Dad. I don't want girls. I want Jessica.
Ah, well, I remember feeling that way about a young lady named your mom, and that's not an urban diss. Your mom was my Jessica. I remember the first time I saw her, I thought...
I should get her pregnant, and then she'll have to marry me.
I beg your pardon, Rick. Inappropriate.
Sorry, please proceed with your story about banging my daughter in high school. I'm not sure you want to take romantic advice from this guy, Morty. His marriage is hanging from a thread.
My marriage is fine, thank you.
Jerry, it's your house. Whatever you say it is how it is, but I think a blind man could see that Beth is looking for the door. I barely have a reason to care, and even I notice. Come on, Rick. Don't talk about my parents like that. Listen, Morty, I hate to break it to you, but what people call love is just a chemical reaction that compels animals to breed. It hits hard, Morty, then it slowly fades, leaving you stranded in a failing marriage. I did it. Your parents are gonna do it. Break the cycle, Morty. Rise above. Focus on science. All right, well, I'm gonna go get dressed for the dance.
Yeah, I'm just going to check on your mom.
There was a letter written by a gentleman called David Walters to The Economist, and I don't know when. And in it, he has a little poem. Scientists have proven a fact I find distracting. When we fall in love, it's just chemicals reacting. I console myself, however, at their lack of sensitivity in the knowledge that their thinking is just electrical activity.
That's very true.
This needs to be taken at two levels. The level at which the comment about love is made as a scientific assertion. And on that level, I'm very sympathetic to it, as such that, and this is getting personal, my knowledge of that fact, my knowledge about, and I do a lot of psychology and neurology, right? What the work I do in political communication, so I'm kind of into this a bit. I know it's an addiction, that the Jessica, having your Jessica, right? It's essentially, it's the neurological analog to an addiction. It's not even analog, it pretty much is an addiction. So if you know when you're experiencing that you're caught in an addiction, and if you know that when you are caught in addiction, you are likely to make decisions that are going to affect your life potentially negatively, that your ability to make good judgments, and I don't just mean logical, rationalist judgments, even good by any measure, by a measure of will I be happy 20 years from now if I make this decision, that ability is impaired when you are in the first throes of love. Once you know all of that, it becomes tricky, right, to act in the normal way that people act.
Are you familiar with Socrates' quote on this?
I don't know which one you mean, no.
He says, by all means, marry. If you get a good wife, you'll be happy. If not, you'll become a philosopher.
Yeah. The problem is that I think that made sense. I think when he said that, he was meaning where you go within the context you've made for yourself of being married,
Yes.
and you take yourself away to understand why things, take yourself away in your head, intellectually, to understand why things weren't as you thought they were going to be in the throes of your addiction. Now,
Yes.
however, we don't do that. We just get divorced, and we just get divorced because what we think marriage is, what we think is the thing that we do when we're caught in the addiction, right, get married, is not what it is, not what it is for. Our culture sells us, our culture, in other words, being in this place at this time, if you believe things about the commitment that you're making that are, well, I was going to say largely false, but probably that's not true, massively incomplete. The thing that you believe about what it will be like to be married is mostly irrelevant to the actual experience you'll have. And that's the problem. And then we get divorced in our culture. And what that means for a lot of children who are created in that context of marriage is pretty damn grim.
Let's get into why we're doing this.
Okay, well, I guess I should say why I contacted you, right? Or actually, to be fair, why my friend and colleague Paul contacted you on my behalf. I have a personal brand that I'm kind of building a little bit. Robin Kerner, The Art of Political Persuasion. And my most powerful content has been the articles that I write. And indeed, it was an article that went viral that put me into American politics. There's a whole story there. And the live presentations and speeches I give, that seems to be where I have the most impact. Now, I was invited to do an online radio show a couple of years ago, and I've done that. But my heart wasn't really in it because there's a ton of kind of liberty-orientated folks, which is what I am, I'm one of those, doing podcasts and interviewing some amazing people. And I don't really want to just be a guy doing an interview that another guy could be doing.
Yes.
And, my shows were like 45 minutes, an hour, and I wasn't growing them because, I say, my heart wasn't in it. Now, in building a personal brand in this day and age, articles are fine, live stuff is great, but there's one other leg to the stool that you need, and that's video. And I've not done video, and there's a reasons for that, which is another conversation, but I realized I got to get into it. But it's not my medium. It's not, as I say, it's not something I'm used to. So I was concerned that if I'm going to do videos that anybody's going to want to watch, that were as good as some of the great other YouTube videos and channels out there, that I need to be doing a video with someone as smart as I am who can draw me out, right? Draw my content out of me at a level that I provide in my articles and when I'm live. Because I found, and I've practiced a little bit, when I talk into a camera, just like when there's nobody there, right? It's not as good. I feel like I don't get to the depth that I want to get to.
I've experienced the same thing.
Okay,
So,
good.
So for the viewers who don't know, Robin, how many degrees do you have? Do you just have a master's in physics?
I have 3.
You have 3 degrees.
If anybody's counting.
All right. What are those degrees?
So I have a bachelor's in natural sciences physics, a master's in natural sciences physics, and a master's in philosophy of science.
Why 2 masters and not a PhD?
Oh, that's a great question.
Is it a quick question?
I can do it quickly, I think.
All right, let's go. Let's answer that.
I did my master's in the philosophy of science, and I loved it. I studied at Cambridge. All of those degrees are from Cambridge. And I'm made to be sitting in the ivory tower. It was so easy for me. It was so comfortable for me. And because I was very successful in that master's, I was, kind of invited to hang around for PhD, which would mean 3 or 4 more years in the ivory tower. And I just thought, if I stayed in that ivory tower, I would be an eternal schoolboy. And, as appealing as that was, I was itching for a challenge. And I felt the real world would be more of a challenge than the PhD that I knew I would eventually get. I have to not know that I'm going to succeed for me to rise to the challenge. There's got to be something.
Yes.
And I knew, my grandfather once said to me that his father told him that an ox could get a PhD if he sat on a bench long enough. And I kind of think that's true. Obviously, I would imagine that the PhD that I would do would be more valuable than one that an ox might knock out at a poor university sitting on a bench. But even so, right, I just felt there was a big wide world out there, and I would learn more getting into the world rather than staying in this little microcosm thereof, doing more of what I loved.
There are a great deal of extremely talented and smart writers who are putting out content. They want people to draw out their content. They want people to review it. There's YouTube stars who are reviewing the complexities, and people are listening to these YouTube people explain how complex these scenes are. And they're saying, wow, that's really deep. And that's a show I watch and I like. Never thought of it like that. And I believe that you and I are going to be the best at this.
We're going to find out.
We're going to find out. Is that a decent transition into this first episode with Rick and Morty?
Good enough.
All right. So we are planning on doing this multiple times. So you're going to get to see us maybe every week, maybe every 2 weeks, maybe every couple days. It's going to be great.